Welcome everyone to this brand new episode of Consular Extra Time. Today we are diving into the highest level with a coach who doesn't just coach. He has a keen eye. He was born in 1960 in Dax. Correct me, Thierry, if that's incorrect. Well, that's Thierry Vincent. He has been a major figure in handball for over 35 years, from the courts of Bordeaux and Marignac. Perhaps in the 90s, if I recall correctly, all the way to the pinnacle of French handball with the historic title of Toulon in 2010, and more recently, the Scudetto in Italy with PDO Salerno. His career is truly a lesson in longevity. Thierry, I believe, is also the individual who has proudly represented the colors of Ivory Coast, Congo, and Guinea on African podiums. And today we are going to decipher his eye for talent and his method for building champions. So welcome back, Thierry, and thank you for taking the time to be with us. We appreciate you very much. My first question, this journey you've made since your coaching beginnings in the 90s, or even before, what is the common thread, the guiding principle that connects all these adventures across two continents?
Well, I would summarize it in one word. It's the human element. That's it. And everything that surrounds the human element. The relationships, the discovery, the empathy, the acceptance of differences. That's it. The work, of course. That's it. And being serious without taking yourself too seriously.
Of course. I want to start directly in medias res, as they say in Latin, right in the middle of things. You've launched players like, for example, Siraba Dembele. What is the non-technical character trait that makes you say immediately, or perhaps after a little time, this one will become an excellent player, perhaps even a legend?
Well, there are several criteria. Indeed, for example, I saw Siraba for the first time when she was 17. She was playing left back in National 2. In fact, my wife, who is a former Russian international handball player, often tells me, well, she's my wife, but she often tells me, you have an eye for sensing within 5 minutes if a player, well, indeed, it has happened to me several times. So is it the eye? I think that the first criterion for me is, well, I often say jokingly, it's the first two steps on the court that make me think, okay, there might be something there. Of course, that's a bit of an oversimplification because then many other things come into play. The will, the capacity to work hard, to question oneself, and so on. But that initial contact, right now, there's a young girl playing in the club where I am. She's under 17. As soon as I saw her, I thought to myself, that one, she has something special. To define it exactly, well, I'll tell you again, it's those first two steps on the court that are the most important action for a handball player.
So it's a bit of an intuition that tells you it could be something. I mean, you have an eye for it too, but you just feel it.
Yes. Well, indeed, that's why it's truly difficult to define. But yes, it's the eye. It's an overall feeling about the attitude about her commitment, about what she's capable of doing. And even if she fails, you just feel that, well, it's like finding a diamond and needing to polish it a little bit. So sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't. But I also think it's my background as I'm a physical education teacher, and my father was a PE teacher, and we were educated in this perception of sport, of what an athlete can be, Well, it's true that it's difficult. When you asked me that question, I thought, very good question, but where is the answer? Experience. I would say experience. Experience and that feeling, like when you say to yourself, there's something there. Something's there.
Is it thanks to experience, or is it something you already have within you from the beginning, or is it a bit of both?
Well, I think I had that from the start. First of all, I really enjoy working with young players and developing them. That's been a guiding principle throughout my career. So it's also linked to the styles of play I want to see practiced. That's why I'm talking about the first two steps, because I like dynamic handball. And for me, everything comes down to those first two steps. Of course, it's a summary of it's like trying to summarize life in just two words. It's quite complicated.
Yeah.
But when I feel that there's this dynamism, this explosion, and for me that encompasses everything, these first two pillars: character, willpower, the desire to work hard, the drive to surpass others. So it's a whole lot of aggregated criteria that honestly, I could be wrong, and I've been wrong, but I truly believe that in the vast majority of cases, I haven't been mistaken. Because you mentioned Marie Paula, Saraba Dembélé, but there are others as well. Marie Paul Niboyu, who joined the French national team, even though the club I was joining didn't even want to keep her. And I really insisted a lot. Christianne Mwasesa, I think we'll talk about her again. When I first saw her, well, I'll tell you later what she was like on the court. And there are many things like that mean as you accumulate experience and you compare it to what the players offer, well, you manage to. Anyway, after all, I'm not the only one with that perception.
And in the case of Christianne Mwasesa, is it that for you, the example, is it a perfect example of the success of integrating talents like her, African talents in Europe?
Well, she is the quintessential example of a diamond that you find and then polish. Actually, Christianne, when I was with Ivory Coast at a training camp with the national team, we played a friendly match against other players from Ivory Coast and the foreign players, the best foreign players who were playing in Ivory Coast, because she is from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And when we played, she was there, left back, in front of my bench, managing. Well, she'd catch the ball, pass it, catch the ball, pass it. And all of a sudden, she'd catch the ball, bang, bang, goal, and retreat before we even saw the ball go in and everything. I thought, what kind of alien is this? And in fact, she had no tactical understanding, nothing. But she had this foundation that, as I told you earlier, on two supports, she left everyone in the dust. She jumped high, she accelerated. So it took a long time to get her to France due to visa issues. But from the moment she arrived, we built her tactics with her, her tactical perception, et cetera, et cetera. She arrived when I was in Marignac. She followed me to Toulon. Well, I can say it without offending others. She is the best player I've ever coached in my career. But at the beginning, it was just a gem, a rough diamond, who ended up being the best left back in the French championship 3 times. Well, you've seen her play, haven't you?
Yeah.
Exactly. It was, well, incredible. That's the word. Everyone wanted her, but she never left me, except to go back to Africa.
To come back to the time, the date of your queen, what place do you leave to affect feeling, to sentiment, and to the human element when you recruit a player, a foreign player, or a player from Africa, for example?
The first recruitment criterion for me is the human being. That is to say, you can propose an exceptional player to me, because now I know a lot of people, but before I used to inquire. I inquire about the player, but I also inquire about the human being. Our profession means we can choose. I prefer to choose a player, well, who is an 8 out of 10 in terms of handball skills, but who is a great person rather than someone who is a 10 out of 10, but who I know will cause problems either with the coach or within the group dynamic, even though I have coached players with very, very strong personalities. But I think that the human being, even with players of strong character, is the primary criterion. That is to say, I'm not just interested in the handball player. I'm interested in the person, in who she is, and so on. And then, however, regarding handball, because I think that's also the meaning of your question. Through my network of agents, I recruited a lot in Scandinavia. They knew. I had met agents. I'd gone to see them in Denmark. We discussed handball a lot. They understood my perception of handball, the kind of handball I wanted to see played. And when they had players, well, obviously I was never in a rich club, the only clubs in the second half of the budget, well, in France, even at the bottom of the table. They always proposed players to me who were a bit unknown, but who they thought could fit or would fit into the playing profile. And indeed, it happened. 9 times out of 10, it happened that way. And players who were a bit underrated became internationals in their countries or later moved on to big championships.
A question regarding that made me think of Toulon's achievement, in 2010. You still managed to break Metz's dominance, didn't you?
Right. Oh, yes.
And looking back, what was your psychological leverage to make your players believe that the title was actually possible to achieve, because it was quite a significant effort after all?
Well, first of all, it was my first year arriving in Toulon, and the club had just barely avoided relegation by 1 point, I believe, in the second division. But I arrived with Christianne Mwasesa, whom we spoke about earlier. Afterwards, we made what I consider to be quality recruitments. And in August, Paris's misfortunes meant we were able to get Saraba Dembele, whom I'd had before at Marignac, because when the Paris club went under, she called me. So we had finished our recruitment, but well, I insisted that the club take her on. Exactly. So we had built a rather interesting team. The second thing is that year, it was the first time they introduced the playoffs. So it was a season where the only objective was to finish in the top 6 to be safe. That was our primary goal. We thought it was going to be very, very tough, but we went for a training camp in Germany in Oldenburg, and we played a match against Oldenburg, which at the time was a big European team. We won by 9 goals in Oldenburg. And then with my assistant, we said to ourselves, there might be something there after all. And and we found ourselves there returning to France. And well, in the championship, we finished 5th. And so the first 2 were qualified for the semifinals. The 5th played a home and away match against the 4th, where we hosted first and then went away. And in fact, we qualified. We were sure to be 5th with 2 matches left of the regular championship. So in the locker room, we told the girls, I'll remember it my whole life because it's a memory that stands out. I had said, we have 2 matches left. The last 2 matches, we don't care about them. That's it. It's not important. However, starting this Monday, we'll be working physically. We'll be doing physical preparation again to be at the top of our game for the playoffs. And in the playoffs, we really have nothing to lose at all. So we played Nimes in the quarterfinals, who had just won the European Cup the year before. We won, I think, by 8 goals in the first leg. We qualified in the return match at their home. After that, we played Metz, and we won by 2 goals in the first leg. And the pre-match talk had been, we're going to be down by 5, 6, 7 goals after 15 minutes. But we had a game plan. Don't abandon it. Stick to the game plan. Indeed, after 20 minutes, I think we were down by 6. And the girls stayed focused on what we had decided, and we drew the match there. So we qualified for the final. And in the final, similarly, we won by 5 goals against Le Havre in the first leg. And we're going to win, or rather draw the return match in Le Havre. So we are champions. So why? And indeed, you used, in my opinion, the right expression. We made our players believe that we were invincible, which was false. But it shows how fundamental the psychological aspect is. And by the way, for the record, the year after, they canceled the playoffs because it had caused quite a stir, a lot of talk, especially in Metz, which is a club, for me, the best French club. They said to themselves, no, Toulon, they finished 5th and end up champions. That's not right. So they reverted to the regular championship format.
So it caused some changes in the championship itself. Well, in the
regulations. But then a few years later, they returned to the playoffs. And now today we were without playoffs. So there you have it.
They were afraid of reliving it.
Exactly. But, you know, it's, after all, it's really a philosophical question. In France, we like traditional championships. The first place team is the champion. That's because they've earned it all year, except that in France, in rugby, basketball, volleyball, there are playoffs. In all Anglo-Saxon championships in the United States, there are a lot of playoffs. And that brings, first of all, it highlights and shines a light on our sport. And I think that's very good because it creates dynamism. You know, the Palais des Sports in Toulon, during the playoffs, there were 4,400 seats. It was full all the time, all the time. Whereas in the championship, there were 1,200, 1,500, you see. So it's a real philosophical question.
What do you think? What is the best structure in this case, or what is the best way? Playoffs, without playoffs?
Well, I would honestly say
If you could choose.
the playoffs, because it's, once again, it really highlights our sport. It creates new events. In fact, our sport lacks media coverage in France, and the playoffs really bring it into the spotlight. Exactly. Perhaps TV channels would be much more interested, you know, ever since. Well, back when we were champions, the championship, it was already over by January because Metz was first with an 8-point lead. No more championships, so no one was interested in the championship anymore. This really revives it. So indeed, if you're a purist of the sport, you might say, well, it's not normal for a team to finish fifth. Except you can build strategies by playing your younger players because you know you're going to be in the top six, for example. You can develop your young players during the regular season so that afterwards, when you get to the playoffs, you arrive with a team that is stronger overall.
So you would choose this option.
Playoffs.
The playoffs also to have more, yes, more people who watch, who follow, right, the sport. So there's that aspect, the spectator.
Yes, yes, because in fact, we are producing a spectacle.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Hitchcock for that was strong. Exactly. We should play handball like Hitchcock until the very end.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yes, there's suspense, isn't there?
Exactly, precisely.
And Hitchcock, he was the master of suspense, he was.
Of course.
The first, well, one of the best, let's say, in film, right? And a very, very good, excellent comparison. And after Toulon's feat, what happened after that? Could you briefly tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, listen, the year after that, we won the Coupe de France. And then the year after that, we won the Coupe de France again. So at the end of that third season, we had 3 titles, which were the only titles Toulon ever had. There were no others, neither before nor after. Well, we only had the goalkeeper left. All the other field players had gone to bigger clubs. Saraba Dembele had gone to Denmark, Marie-Paul Nabuyu to Denmark, Pearl van der Wissel had returned to Germany. Our young right winger, Manon Le Bihan, had left for Brest. We didn't have any more. Christianne Mwasesa left again. The year after, I believe, to Africa, to Angola, the pivot player had left. I don't remember where, but everyone had left. So, well, that was the price of glory. We had good results, but we didn't have enough money to keep those players. So the results stagnated, but we still played in the European Cup 2 more times.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want, well, after that, during my 10th season there, because I'm a man of projects, as you said, and I'm not there for just 1 year and then leave, I don't really like that. Well, I didn't really like it, but I'll explain later. And I wasn't kept because, well, the results were not as good, but we were still, you know, in the middle of the table. We weren't in Europe anymore, but that was completely normal for me. Because we had developed some good players, young ones. We had discovered some gems like Christianne. And then, well, after that, the others, they took them. That's the law of sports. But the management didn't understand that. And they thought, you know, when they didn't renew my contract, the manager told me, we want to win titles. And I told him, the day you win titles, it will snow in Toulon in July. We are on the Mediterranean coast. Because it's not because today, unfortunately, sports are linked to finances. And you can achieve feats, but a feat, as its name suggests, is temporary. You can't achieve a feat every year. We did it 3 times in a row. We couldn't do it anymore. So today, Toulon, well, this year it's a bit better, but since I left Toulon in 2019, they've always played just to avoid relegation, you see. Because you can't compete, you can't. So you need to have philosophies of work. You need to have. That is to say, not everyone can be a champion. That's it. To summarize, not everyone can be a champion. And if you want to be a champion with Toulon today, or with Plan de Cooks, or with, I don't know, with Marignac, you won't be able to.
So it's very much linked to finances. Is that what you're saying exactly? Or even too much?
Not only that, but for the most part, yes.
For the most part.
Well, if you have the finances, you keep the main 7 who won the 3 titles in Toulon. You. Instead of paying them and if a club contacts them at 3, you pay them 3 like the other club, they'll stay because they're in their environment. So today, finances are an integral part of how things operate.
Interesting theory.
I don't know.
No, it's also remarkable, the experience and the development. I also wanted to talk about your experience recently in Italy, the Italian experience, because you won the championship with the team with Salerno.
Yes.
So Salerno, what did you bring of your touch French into this Italian context, which is still a bit different, a different championship, a very passionate Italian context? What did you bring to it?
That's a very good question. First, to make you smile, it was the same format with playoffs.
Okay.
You had to be in the top 4. You had to be in the top 4. We finished 3rd, and we ended up champions. We were absolutely not favorites, but well, we knew how to prepare once again to be ready for the playoffs. What did I bring? So the Italian championship, it's a championship I absolutely loved. However, at 3 levels, really, there are 4 or 5 teams of a good level, a very decent level. 4 average teams and 4 really weak teams. There you go. You see, it's really 3 tiers. However, as you rightly said, it's a country of passion. So, what did I bring to the table? I believe I brought a sense of calm and structure to the training sessions, to the way we approach competition, to the rhythm of the workouts, both throughout the week and within each individual training session itself. Also, physical conditioning. We worked a lot on physical aspects, but always with the handball spirit in mind, with the ball, very often with the ball. Perhaps a bit of tactical rigor, but I would say the most important thing, the biggest contribution, was serenity. You know, they absolutely wanted to be champions because they hadn't been champions, I believe, for the 2 years prior. But before that, they dominated. They had 9 titles. And in Italy, you have 10 titles, you get a star, a big star in your jersey. That was their objective. They had missed it the 2 years before. And there was a team facing us that was truly, in my opinion, superior. Eris, the Sicilians, and who had recruited players, you know, Cabral, Barbosa, and Nascimento, players with enormous international accolades. And in the championship, the first leg at their place, we lost by 12 goals. And on the return leg at our place, we lost by 1 goal. And if you can imagine, after the 12-goal defeat, the management was furious. And I told them, calm down, today is not the day to win. Today is not the day to win. In the return match, we only lost by 1 goal. And in the playoffs, in the final, it was a best-of-3 series or best-of-2. We drew at their place. We won at our place. And we didn't need to play the 3rd match. And they all congratulated me. They wanted me to stay and everything. But the problem is, there isn't this notion of the objective isn't tomorrow. It's May 30th if the final is on May 30th. It's about getting into the top four of the regular championship to then work towards the playoffs. You see? So I think that's what I brought, a slightly more global vision, a global vision of what a season should be. For them, losing a match was inconceivable. They couldn't lose. But it comes back to what I was telling you earlier. If you always play your starting seven and the others sit on the bench for an hour, the day you need them, they won't be there, the day you need to.
Exactly.
And I've always, I have a photo from the return final at our place that I've kept and will keep because for me, it's the result of a coach's success. One of our girls scored, and when she comes back in the photo, she's high-fiving the girls who are on the bench. And the entire bench, all the substitutes are standing up to high-five her. And that's when you realize when your whole bench is standing, it means you've achieved that perfect team cohesion, that osmosis for your team. And in fact, that's what I wanted them to understand. So afterwards, it ends well because we are champions. But there's never any coincidence in life, in my opinion. For me, there's chance doesn't exist.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So there you have it, a truly fabulous experience. They actually recontacted me recently because they parted ways with the coach who took over from me because they just didn't have the patience. Perhaps he didn't know how to make them understand. And yet last year, I swear, when we lost by 12 goals over there, at one point, I told them, because we had a crisis meeting, in Italy, everything goes. I told them, no problem at all. Send me back to France. No worries. All right. However, if you're going to keep me, let me work the way I believe one should work. They told me, okay. And it ended well. But I truly loved Italy. They recontacted me, but I can't because I'm committed here and I'm a man of my word. I'm currently engaged with a club here, but I would have loved to go back. It's truly magnificent.
Do you think you'll go back there in the future?
Listen, I don't know because, as you mentioned in the preamble, I was born a very long time ago. I still have the passion, so I have a few leads abroad as well. Club I'm with might have a project to move up. I don't know. I'm going to weigh the pros and cons over the next month to make my decision.
Because, well, following your career, I see that you focused. Well, you've had a lot of success, always in the South, haven't you? The region, Mediterranean, even Africa. So that's why I'm asking. Perhaps that attracts you a bit more, doesn't it?
No. Because you see, I'm a big fan of Scandinavian handball and Scandinavian players. I've coached so many of them in my clubs. But as I told you, I'm a loyal man. I started my career as a professional coach with the Girondins de Bordeaux men's team for 2 years. And since then, it's only been women's teams. I spent 10 years in Marignac, 9 years in Toulon. In Toulon, I was going to become the club manager. Well, it ended badly because one of the two presidents who ran the club and who was actually the real person in charge of the club passed away. And that opened the door to incompetent people who, kept changing coaches afterwards. And otherwise, I would have stayed. No, the South, there's no calculation involved. As I told you, I'm from the North. My first 10 years, I spent them in Hazebrook, in the North, between Lille and Dunkerque. See?
Oh, yes, that's very northern.
Exactly. Just 10 kilometers from Belgium, but I spent 10 wonderful years there, right? If I have contact with Germany, for example, I wouldn't say no. I'm not closed off to it. However, what? Because in some of your questions, I think that if I were to have one regret in my career, it would be not having gone abroad sooner to take on clubs and to leave when everything is going well. You asked me a question earlier before we started. You asked me, what would you advise young coaches? Leave when everything is going well. Don't wait until things are bad. Don't wait until you're forced out. But it's complicated because you're not alone. I had my family, my children, and you. It's complicated to say that every 2 or 3 years you're going to move. But, that's the job.
Thank you very much. So Italy was incredible too. So you also got to know the culture there a bit more, the country, the mentality. You had a really interesting experience because you arrived and then became a champion.
Yes, yes. And I loved Italy. I loved Italy. It was southern Italy too. Very, it's just south of Naples. So Naples, with its notorious reputation and all, but the landscapes are magnificent. The climate is sumptuous. The food is very, very good. And the players, in the end, there were 7 girls who were on the Italian national team. And you see, in young ones, out of a group of 16, I had 9 players who were 20 or younger. Exactly. It comes back to what I was telling you earlier, training, working with young people, developing them. I really enjoyed myself in Italy, truly.
Is there a future for Italian handball? What would you say in, well, 5 years, 10 years? Will they develop? I mean, what do you see now that you've had the occasion, the opportunity to also see a bit of the championship there?
They participated in the World Cup. Did you see that? They
Yes.
participated in the European Championship. All right. So, and the girls, the problem is that today the federation doesn't provide enough resources for them to work with. Because I said it when I left Italy, I said, if tomorrow you're looking for a coach and if you're willing to put in the work, don't hesitate, just give me a call. Because honestly, having had 7 of them in Salerno, there's truly a lot of potential there. There's real potential. In the European Cup, we were eliminated by Prague, Slavia Prague, but we had won one of the 2 matches. They were eliminated by a Slovak club that's first or second in the MOL League. I don't know what it's called. They won one of the 2 matches. And in Italy, you're only allowed 3 foreign players. So the others are all Italian players. Therefore, there is definitely potential there. Yes, to answer your question, there is potential, but like everywhere else, you need to invest resources for training camps, for organizing tournaments, for competing against stronger teams. But there is definitely potential. There is potential.
And you mentioned the difference between men's handball and women's. You have a lot of experience. You also have some experience in men's handball early on in the 90s. What would you say, why is there such a big difference? Ultimately, why does this difference exist?
Well, it exists a lot in Latin countries, so you have half the answer in what I just said.
Okay.
The macho countries. Because in Scandinavia,
Yes.
exactly, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, it's on the same footing. Afterward, in Latin countries, well, we'll talk about France because that's the one I know best. There isn't the same media coverage. So without media, fewer partners get involved. I think there's less quality in the management of the clubs. In men's handball, it's often directors who are paid. So they have skills that match their position. In women's handball, it's often volunteers who, are there because at some point their daughter used to play. You see?
Mm-hmm.
And today, I think there are many such criteria: media coverage, culture, Latin culture,
You're rooted in the culture too.
Yes. Now I don't want to get too philosophical, but women in Latin countries don't have the same image as in Nordic countries. That's it. It's in Denmark. I've been to Denmark very, very often. You turn on public TV and there's a women's handball match. There you go.
There's almost no difference at all.
In France, you have a televised match on pay channels every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. You see? So it's all of that, all these elements that make it so. Because France isn't a country that's too bad at women's handball when you look at international results. And yet there are many, many problems currently in the French clubs. Many problems indeed.
How would you describe this dynamic right now at this moment in handball in Europe, in the world?
Well, the dominance of Nordic countries, I don't entirely agree with that. Indeed, currently Norway, yes, dominates, but France still has many, many women's titles. But you know, the discussion I often have with my Scandinavian handball friends, when I talk to them, I say, I'm so impressed by the technical and tactical quality of your players, of your teams. And they reply, but I'm impressed by the physical qualities of your players. And I think, having tried to read, I tried to think about it. Because in France, a few years ago, about 15 years ago, we wanted to draw inspiration from the Scandinavian model in the training of young female players, except that it's not possible. In fact, I explain it like this, because, you know, I was in charge of the Talents National Center for 6 years. In fact, when we get players who come from immigration, from former parents or grandparents who came to work in France, etc. And we have players who possess exceptional physical qualities coming from Africa, you know, and so they are much more focused on technical and tactical work than we are. But when the levels rise and we find ourselves facing each other at the highest level, well, I think that the technical and tactical aspects really surpass the physical. It's the physical because, well, after all, the Scandinavians are very good technically and tactically, but they're not exactly grandmas on the court either. You see, when you watch Rystad like that play, she's the prototype of the modern player. But if you want, when it comes to the top, the French women, physically, they dominate until they come across someone who is more or less at the same physical level. Even if France is somewhat dominant, the difference is made on the technical and tactical side. And today, indeed, I think that with the disappearance of Russian competitions, the titles will be contested between France and Norway for quite some time, with Hungary, which, you know, occasionally making an appearance, Denmark, the Netherlands, but there will be wild cards from time to time. But the dominance will occur between Norway and France, and with two completely different approaches. That's how I perceive it based on my analysis. You see, because I've had many Scandinavian players on my teams, especially in Toulon, many, and even afterwards in Salerno. And when I talk a lot with them, they just don't understand our style of handball. And they always struggle a bit in their first year playing our style of handball.
So there's this dynamic mental, physical. The difference is that well, at the competition level too, and cultural differences, differences in the championship as well, the culture of the championships. And speaking of Scandinavia, France, what do you think of Germany? Does it fall into the category of physical handball, like in France rather too, or Latin handball? Or is it more like the Scandinavian school of thought?
That's an excellent question. I would say they are somewhere between Scandinavia and the Latin countries, and they take a little bit from both. They really do take a little from each. But because, you know, we often jokingly say in France, there was an advertisement that said Deutsche Qualität. And there you go. The Germans are very strong, extremely strong. So that means that in that aspect, they resemble the French players a bit, robust, with great physical qualities. But in terms of the developed handball style, I think they are a bit closer to the Scandinavian countries, with an influence with quite a few Scandinavian players also playing in Germany. But I think that if you ask me to put them in one camp, I would rather put them in the camp of the Northerners or the Nordics.
Okay. And I also wanted to move on a bit to African adventure. We talked about Scandinavia. We talked about Latin handball, France, Germany. You had the challenge of the field in Ivory Coast, Congo, Guinea. What is the challenge? What is the invisible challenge that you encountered there and that we don't suspect in Europe?
Well, first of all, I'm still with the Guinea national team, okay? At the same time, because it's always during international periods. So for this question, I had noted a few things, a few points, because it's a very good, a truly excellent question that needs to be answered. So, see, I need my glasses to read. I had put down as the essential word when you go to Africa, it's adaptability. That's it. Meaning that if you go to Africa with the reflective, thoughtful format of a European, you have to go home. Talking about handball. I started with Ivory Coast in 2007 because I had 3 players on my team in Marignac, 3 players who were Ivorian by origin and who played with the national team. And they had asked me if I was interested. And she had told me before I went, she had said, Thierry, it's not Europe. And I thought to myself, why is she telling me that? In fact, if you are too rigid in your principles, so I'll give you a simple example. We were with the national team at the hotel, and I was trying to tell the girls at 10 to 9, at 9 o'clock, we take the bus at 10 to 9, you are in the hotel lobby. Training starts at 9:30, so you're dressed, we arrive, and we start. At 10 to 9, everyone is downstairs. 9 o'clock, no bus. 9:05, no bus.
9.
No bus. I asked Captain, well, what about the bus? She said, I know the driver's number, I'll call him. She called the driver. The driver said, I haven't been given money for gas, so I'm not coming.
Okay.
What do we do? It was my first experience. What do we do? Don't worry. I call taxis. You know, they stop taxis in the street. They negotiate for it. I'll take 100 CFA francs to take you. Oh, no, that's too expensive. So we arrived, instead of training at 9:30, we started at 10:15. If you're completely stuck and you're, narrow-minded, not open-minded, you take the plane and you go home. But for me, Africa, it's my favorite. It's proof is that, you see, after Ivory Coast, I lived 6 months in Brazzaville to prepare for the Africa Cup of Nations with Congo Brazzaville. I really enjoyed it. And when Guinea contacted me to take over the national team in 2021, I said yes without hesitation. Africa is my escape valve. It's people, the players call you 10 years later. Hello, Thierry. Yes, what's up? No, nothing. Just checking in. You see, that's over in Europe. When someone calls you, it's often to ask you for something. It's just to check in. There's a spirit that I adore, that I love, that I go to Africa. So I told my wife the first time I landed in Abidjan, I told her, I feel like I've been here before, even though I had never been to Africa. So if we believe in reincarnation, maybe in another life, I must have lived in Africa. And I love it. There you go. 4. I am in love with Africa. I am in love with Africa.
And what would you say? Why is that missing, that aspect that you just mentioned? So that I call you as a human and not necessarily as a player. Why is that missing in Europe, or what is the difference? What did you see in your experience that made you think?
It's not through my handball experience, but again, I'm old. I lived in a region in the Landes where the door of my grandparents' house, the door of my parents' house was always open. That is to say, people would come over. There were 5 of us in the family, my parents, and then us 3 children. I think that out of 14 meals in a week, there were 10 meals where there were 8, 9, or 10 people. Because my father was a coach, there were always players who would come to eat after the game, after practice. There was always someone at my house. Exactly. And I think society has evolved. Nowadays, people tend to close their doors and stay at home rather than open them to the outside. So I think it's a societal phenomenon. And in Europe, well, maybe because we are more affluent, maybe because people are closing themselves off. Because we fear others, we fear differences. In Africa, it's always open. That's it. In Africa, I have African friends, but real African friends with whom we call each other every week, we're always in touch. It's something else entirely. But if you don't have an open mind, you shouldn't go. You shouldn't go because you'll say to yourself, that's not possible. That's not possible. That's not possible. But yes, considering their lives and their country, it is possible. And it's even natural.
So what's missing, if I understand correctly, is also this human connection, and also community, the sense of having a community that, as you said, as we used to have in France before, and even in other countries. Doors were open, people gathered, ate together, all of that. What's missing now today is also a problem of society than no of social.
For me, yes. And well, that period was catastrophic, but it made people realize that they still needed to stay connected with everyone. And I think that COVID, in its misfortune, allowed people to say to themselves, "Damn, life is short. Let's enjoy the people around us a little." Because when you stay locked up at home by choice, it's not the same as when you stay locked up at home by obligation. And when it's by obligation, you realize you no longer have the choice to go see others. So when you get the choice back, you go back to others, and that's it. And Africa, in fact, is in Africa you have a problem, they help you. That's it. And I'm in love with Africa. It shows, doesn't it?
So between Italy and Africa, what would you choose?
Both. Because a selection, oh no, because being a coach for an African national team is not a full-time job. It's only for training camps during international breaks. So when European countries aren't playing, the clubs in Europe aren't playing either. And it's not even every international week. There aren't enough resources to organize training camps.
And I'm asking the same question regarding Africa. Is there a future for African handball, women's, men's?
Well, listen, I think there is one because the boys with Egypt a few years ago, Tunisia, and the girls with Angola participate every time in the Olympic Games and the World Championships, etc. But the countries I mentioned, well, Tunisia a little less so currently, but Egypt for the boys and Angola for the girls, they work just like in Europe. In Angola, from the age of 11, the girls train every single day. They're like training centers. There's our teams and so on and so forth. The girls are actually paid to play handball. In Egypt, we went twice for training camps with Guinea and Egypt. We did joint training camps with the Egyptian women's national team that participated in the World Cup recently. And similarly, they have gatherings. They have 11 training centers throughout the entire country. In fact, what's missing in other countries is investment, both financial, structural, political, the development policy. Today in Guinea, the Guinean Federation does not have financial autonomy. It is dependent on the ministry, and like in many African countries. For example, when I want to organize a training camp with Guinea, I send the dates, the locations, and all that stuff up to the president. The president has to ask the Ministry of Sports, which then asks the Ministry of Budget, and it's validated by the country's presidency, and then it comes back down. So you see, there's no autonomy. So it's kind of at the whim of the political leadership, we could say. And I think that must be one of the key elements for there to be development, for federations to have financial autonomy, and for them to be able to organize things. And then also the fact that, you see, with Guinea, we were invited to the Plan de Coups tournament, which is the Feminine Cup, where there were 5 French First Division teams, the French U20 team, etc. But the girls who were in Guinea didn't get their visas. So we only played with those who were in Europe. And therefore, how do we develop handball? Well, by making it easier to obtain visas. Even a national team can't get visas to come to France because the embassies have directives. They're afraid that athletes will escape and remain illegally in the territory. Well, we've tried to organize training camps together.
Yeah.
And the first question is the fear of the countries. It's yes, but will they actually leave? It's complicated. So there are many things that need to evolve. I don't have the power to do that. I only have ideas, but as long as countries don't operate for the women's aspect, don't operate like Angola, it will be complicated. Because Angola, they travel everywhere. They play tournaments in Denmark. They play tournaments. They have a recognition that other countries don't have, but that's because they work very hard.
So if we take the case of Angola as an example, it's possible. It would be possible in Tunisia or in Egypt or in other countries as well, naturally. Côte d'Ivoire.
You would see. You would see the number of potential players there are in these countries.
Mm-hmm.
Of players with, there are two left-handers in Guinea that I integrated into the senior national team with me at 16 and 17 years old, a back and a winger. They did all the training camps with us. And I talked to my old club about bringing them to the training center because these are two gems, two left-handers in addition. And I was told, oh no, it's too complicated to get visas. So that means you see these two girls, they had to go to a country that is not in the Schengen area. And so they stagnate. Whereas if they had come to professional training structures in France or elsewhere, they would have been two very, very good players, even for French D1. Now, that was 3 years ago. They've stagnated. I'm afraid it might be a little too late. So all that needs to be improved. All of that solely because of a visa problem. I would be for a world without borders, so I'm a humanist, let's say. The chance to...
Yes, because precisely there are many people who say, no, we must develop our own players, both male and female, in France and Germany. Why do we accept African players or players from other regions? I mean, what would you say as an example, the opposite of what I just said, right? To make them understand that it's not necessarily how it works, or it's not necessarily for this reason that handball will be better if we only keep the people we've developed in France. Do you understand what I mean, the question?
Yes, yes, yes.
What would you say?
Well, I'm going to tell you again what I've told you 2 or 3 times since we started talking. I think the richness of differences, that's it. For me, it's...
The human aspect?
But yes, and we always have something to learn from others. We always have something to learn from other people, from other cultures, from other ways of life. That's why.
It enriches us. It truly enriches us.
But of course, that's why I fight against extremes, because it's not by retreating into ourselves that we're going to perish. If you see, we're going to withdraw, and then we're going to become bitter. All of us. No, we must open up to the world. You know, I know it will never happen. I would be for a world without borders. Mm-hmm. And if you want to take a plane from Guinea to come to Paris, then take the plane. Today, you can't. But in the other direction, you can't go to Egypt without a visa. You see, you can't go to Guinea without a visa.
And are there ways, excuse me, that we could put in place to facilitate this type of exchange between male and female players and different championships? Is there a possibility of doing something like that?
With Africa?
Yes, with Africa, or even countries like Serbia, where it's really quite difficult. Montenegro, no. I mean, the players, both male and female, sometimes have problems precisely because of visas.
Well, I can't really answer for Serbia or Montenegro, except to say that it's a regulatory visa problem, and I think it's still easier to obtain than for an African person. I think, how can we do it? Ever since I've been in Marignac, or rather, when I was in Marignac, I arrived in Marignac in '99, so I think from 2000 to 2001, I've always wanted to set up bridges between the club I was with, which then became Toulon, then Saint-Yobi, and an African federation. I think that, but then it's always the same. It's a question of resources. I'll give you a concrete example. The club, Besançon, okay? I've never coached in Besançon. There's no problem. If Besançon every year went to do a 10-day training camp in Guinea, they would be in contact with Guineans. They would see that they are people just like them, just like us, that we are all the same. The only difference is the country where we live, the color of our skin. But me, I don't see skin color. But they would see that people are the same. And by going there often, it would also create, when they came back, they would say, oh, I saw 2 or 3 good players there. And that might create a kind of call, you see, towards coming to Europe. Today, we are at a stage where African countries have to take the steps to come to Europe, but we close the doors on them. Exactly. If tomorrow the Club of Besançon, I'm just taking this example at random, Club of Besançon says, I'm going to do a 10-day training camp in Conakry. Well, they'll get their visa. They apply for a visa and they'll get it. And for 10 days, they will meet Guinean handball players. And you'll see that if you do that regularly. But people are afraid. People are afraid. I'm sorry to say it, but people are afraid.
Okay, so there's also, we would need to have political will and so on to make it happen, for it to work and for there to be this type of exchange even more. But so broadly speaking, do you think that there is a future in Africa concerning handball sport? You are part of this plan too, because you still manage the Guinean team. If you could change something in France in terms of structure, what would be your first measure to sustainably restructure handball in general, or even handball local?
So French handball is very well structured. This means that from the age of 11, there's an entire system for identifying talent. I believe that in terms of the structuring of the sport of handball and talent detection, there isn't much more that can be done. I think the only factor that I would try to work on, but of course we're speaking hypothetically here, and I don't have the power to do so, would be the media coverage of our sport. That's it. The media coverage. To put oneself, why today women's football? Why today women's rugby is televised in France regularly? Why not handball, which is the sport that has brought the most medals to France in women's team sports? Why not volleyball? Why not basketball? That's it. I don't know. Honestly, I can't answer that question because, well, some people say it's a problem of gymnasiums, of venues, except that today, now there are sports arenas practically everywhere. You see? And the 3,000 seat sports arenas in France are filled for women's handball. Football, they play in 20,000 seat stadiums, and there are 3,000 spectators for handball for women's football. So why? Well, because surely the Football Federation has more power and resources to structure. Perhaps even, I don't know, I really don't know anything about it. It's football, the Football Federation that pays for football to be televised. I don't know. But for us today, that's it. That would be my main focus, how to do it. But I don't have an answer. I don't have a solution how to make our sport get media coverage, women's. Because media coverage would lead to everything else: detection, results, training. In France, we are, I think, without pretension, at the top.
Last question to conclude. After 35 years, more or less, you've been almost everywhere. You've seen many things, Africa, Europe, etc. What still keeps you going today? In quotation marks, still running.
A little bit, yes. No. Two things. Two things. And I said that as long as these two things were there, I would continue. The first is I'll put them in order of priority for it to continue. The first thing is health. That's it. As long as I have my health, I will continue. But not only that, and you also need passion. That's it. And I love it. I really enjoy coaching. I enjoy managing even more. I enjoy structuring and developing even more. As long as these two criteria, passion and health, are there, I will continue. Well, after that, I'm lucky to have a wife who understands me because she played high-level sports. And perhaps unconsciously, the fear of retirement and having nothing to do.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
No, I don't know, but surely it must fit. No, but health. I need to have health and passion. That's it. And as long as I have that, I'll continue. And then offers will come. Because maybe tomorrow, from one day to the next, there won't be anything left, you know? That's right. For now, I still have some. I'm knocking on wood. It needs to keep going. That's it.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Thierry. Perhaps as a final piece of advice for the next generation, what is your message for, let's say, a coach, a trainer who is still hesitant to try the adventure abroad or even the adventure in Africa?
First, dare. That's it. You have to dare. You mustn't be afraid of novelty. You mustn't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone, that famous expression we use so much. And now, because I have a lot of experience, leave, as I told you earlier, leave when everything is going well. Don't hesitate to go abroad. Because you see, when I was in Marignac, so that was between 99 and 2009, we made it to a European Cup final. We did for 8 years. We played in European Cups, and I had been contacted by several clubs abroad. But for the reasons I told you about earlier, family stuff, the kids, you tell yourself, no, no, no. But if they can, the young ones, if they have, or the younger ones, go as soon as you can, and especially when everything is going well.
So to leave when one is
Exactly. And I learned that too late. You have to know when to leave, when everything is going well, rather than, I repeat, I said it earlier, rather than waiting for them to kick you out because things are not going so well.
Thank you very much, Thierry. It was a pleasure. No, and it's excellent to hear you and a regard a even broader horizon. Thanks to you, now I also understand better how it works in France as well from your side, because it's always different in terms of a player or an agency or a coach, right? So that was very interesting. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you all the best there in Angoulême, and I think things will be changing soon. Also with Guinea, is that right?
Yes, we have the Africa Cup of Nations at the end of November in Tunisia.
At the end of November in Tunisia, so Guinea. So everyone who wants to follow the Guinea team, they have the chance. Will it be televised or?
Yes, it will be televised.
Speaking of,
Yes, on the website, I suppose, of the African Handball Confederation. Perhaps on Facebook or on YouTube, things like that.
all right. Anyway, we'll put the links down below in the video, and thank you very much again. I wish you much success, and I hope we'll talk again soon.
Yes, thank you to you, because as long as we're talking about handball, that's good.